Hello, Bulldog fans. From Davis Wade Stadium at Scott Field, Steve Robertson, David Murray here to celebrate a Bulldog victory and to talk about it. And what a victory it was. And yes, Steve, I'm going to take some credit. I mean, I've done a lot of stats in my career, but at the end of the third quarter, I went digging through the MSU record book and found out that, yes, indeed, Joe Moorhead was on track, and as it turned out, did indeed score the most points ever by a first-game Mississippi State football coach. Steve, we had basketball coaches whose teams didn't score 63 points in their first game out. Yes, we thought the Bulldogs would have a good offensive game against Stephen F. Austin. This really exceeded a lot of expectations if you take away a three-series stretch in the third quarter.
It did, David. It's one of those. It's kind of the best of both worlds. You get the blowout win, you get some big offensive plays out there and get the crowd excited, but you also have enough teachable moments that nobody can rest on their laurels and say, man, look how great we are. A lot to clean up between now and next week at Kansas State, but for tonight, David, we're going to celebrate 63 points and a defensive effort that did not yield a single touchdown.
And the closest that Stephen F. Austin even came to touchdowns, they shot themselves in the foot once with a penalty. But otherwise, the Bulldog defense pretty much had their way. I believe now, had they done a review from another angle, they might have given them that pylon catch there in the second quarter, which would have put them on the inch-yard line, that kind of thing. But even so, you really can't complain about what they did. As Jeffrey Simmons said, they knew they were bigger and stronger, so all they had to do was just establish a push and go at it. You throw that in with some of the blitzing we saw, and a lot of run blitzing as well, and they just set the tone for the second half. It's really hard to keep that intensity up in the whole time.
David, for most of the first quarter, Stephen F. Austin had netted a yard of offense, and that was in a passing play. But yeah, it's what we expected to see. And the main thing, David, about all that, and when I begin to think about our expectations for this ball game, how many times have we come into a season opener and then something silly happens? Well, it didn't happen tonight. And we talked about this yesterday. You wanted to get deep into the depth chart. They did that. You wanted to get kind of a shallow dig into the playbook. They did that. And you wanted to get out of here with no major injuries. They did that. So mission accomplished for these Bulldogs.
Yeah, I believe the only player seen leaving the field was Jamal Peters, and we suspected that was cramps, and it was. He came back in return, so State comes out healthy. Although Keaton Thompson told me he was feeling pain once or twice on the field. I don't know whether it's from the hand taking a hit or something like that, but nothing really serious. All right. Let's go to the negatives. I know everybody, in blowouts like this, everybody wants to harp on what could have been better. And yes, there were things that could have been better. You know, even Joe Moorhead joked when they said Keaton was 13 of 31. He said, that's not 50%, is it? And he was kind of laughing, but he made his point there. He wants his quarterbacks throwing 60, 65. All right. He made up for it, and his completions were big. At one point, he had 10 completions, 5 touchdowns. But he also missed some open throws, things like that. So he's still a work in progress. Let's give him credit for what he did and point out that he's still a first game in a sophomore season.
It's true, David. And some of the misses were really kind of head scratchers because, you know, he would connect on some of the big chunk plays, but a lot of the plays were the intermediate route stuff where he was throwing in the ground, underthrowing those routes, and that should be something that he should be very comfortable doing. That was a bit surprising. 13 of 31, you'd like that percentage to be better. Joe Moorhead wants it better. He says our goal is 65%. Well, we're well beneath that. So some room to grow there. But at the same time, when the plays were there to be made, Keaton made them. He did not miss open receivers, and his head coach said, I think when we go back and look at the film, we were in the right church, but oftentimes in the wrong pew, which meant we were throwing to the right guy, and we made the right read. We may not have mechanically followed through and completed the throw, but his mental process was very good, and that says a lot about the young quarterback.
I know I saw some message board complaints about some of the sacks or some of the hurries there, but Stephen F. Austin, they just sold out. They had nothing to lose, and you're going to get through a few times like that. And when he evaded pressure, he made things happen, or they beat them with the ground game. I thought the wide receivers, there's still question marks that people want to ask about that, but they answered a lot of those tonight. And I thought the best catch of the game was one that was out of bounds in the end zone there. It's just a really great effort to beat his defender on those things. So these guys, Stephen Guidry was what we thought he would be. Austin Williams, he pulled a ball practically out of the pollen there to keep a drive going. We saw some great catches, and we saw a lot of potential from other guys.
We did, David, and Cyrus Mitchell, and we've heard privately, we haven't seen a whole lot in practice. We've seen a few things, but we've heard privately from some of the Bulldog quarterbacks and Bulldog defensive backs that Cyrus Mitchell had been the surprise of camp and arguably the most improved player on the team, not just on offense, but the entire roster. 2 big touchdowns tonight, probably certainly the first 100-yard returner, receiver since 2016. I would imagine when Fred Ross had a ball game, and that wasn't an egg bowl. But we could go back and find those numbers. But it has been
this was a split end, not a slot guy, because when we had big receiving games in the past, it was usually a slot receiver. To see split ends making plays like that, that's what our fans have wanted for a long time.
It's true, David, and that's last year there were some injuries, there were some schematic things you dealt with. These are receivers that are eager to go make plays down the field. They're not just content to be perimeter blockers. They want to go make plays, and they did tonight, and they're going to be better because of it, because everybody gained a little confidence. You had 9 guys catch a pass. They spread the ball around really well. Keaton throws 5 touchdown passes. So it's a happy Bulldog locker room, but it's also, for the most part, a very happy Bulldog roster. The Bulldog football parents came out tonight, and just about all of them got a chance to see their child play. And it's weird to say that, but at the same time, too, there's a lot of goodwill built up in a game like this.
And, of course, defensively, State just set the tone at one point that not only did the visiting Lumberjacks have more negative yardage, most of their plays were either for no game or losses. They just could not get anything going. They broke a few plays in the second and third quarters, but they never came close to scoring a touchdown. So the Bulldog defense, they did what they had to do. They showed, and it's kind of a trend now in modern defense, they'll give up plays between the 20s or between the 40s, but when it came red zone time, they really clamped down, and they got such push all evening long that they had the Lumberjacks playing on their heels.
They did, David, and quite frankly, the only time they ever really felt to be a real threat down the field was late in the ball game when the Texas A&M transfer, Anacho, drops the ball against a true freshman corner who bid on a double move. And so the Bulldog defense, as advertised, and I think Joe was happy to go play somebody else just to be able to find some sense of offensive rhythm, because the defense I've seen every day in practice is as good or better than most are going to see on the schedule throughout the year. And so very happy with the effort, very happy, as Jeff Simmons said, to see some of these younger guys embrace what they're taught. Fabian Lovett goes out, true freshman, makes some big plays. Lee Autry, a guy that redshirted last year, made some varsity plays tonight. And so it's exciting as exciting as it is for the guy making the play. Those guys that have kind of been their mentors are equally as excited to see those guys go out there and play real college football.
We're going to wrap up by talking about 2 facts. First, this was not a big weekend for visitors. I know you had some unofficial guys, but that's what you told us in our pregame talk yesterday, that it wouldn't be big. I'm sure they're saving those for that back-to-back SEC stretch when it's Auburn and Florida on campus then. But the other fact I want to get to, we talked to several players about it. Jeff Simmons said it best, but other players said it as well, that the Joe Moorhead that's been amiable and easygoing in the alumni meetings or on the pregame radio, things like that, was a much, much more intense man during practice, but intense in a good, fun way. That I like what Keaton Thompson said. He was confident. He was energetic. He was intense, but he was confident. It rubbed off on the players. They took it and ran with it today. When you can inject that, you don't have to do a lot of yelling and screaming just to get people's attention. You're communicating, you're getting the message across to them in those things. It's just, this was a victory all around for Joe Moorhead and for John Cohen for making the hiring decision as well, and Dr. Mark Keenum picking this man to run this offense.
David, we've learned within the last 12 hours that the game day Joe Moorhead is almost a polar opposite of the press conference Joe Moorhead. Mm-hmm. Now, not in a negative way, in a more of an intense, motivational way, and the players absolutely love seeing that side of him. And he made a comment. He told the players in pregame that we're going to stop scoring when we decide to stop scoring, and that's what Bulldog fans want to hear. Listen, we've had a lot of these 3 yards on a cloud of dust seasons and hope we could win a game on defense. It's nice to be able to go put some points on the board and be able to throw the ball down the field and really attack a defense. It's an exciting brand of football, and I really believe the best is yet to come.
Or there's a quote that somebody who was in the locker room halftime, not going to blow his cover on it, he said that they were talking about, they had a big lead, 35-3 at that point, and he said it's their job to stop us. And Joe Moore had used this phrase, "We are a left lane team." Now, I'm sure he hasn't driven down Highway 49 with all the left lane bandits down there all the time that block your way, but you get the point. This is a team, this is an offense and a defense and a special teams that are not going to slow down for anybody. They will not let other teams dictate to them how they play ball.
And, David, sometimes you win the ball game during the other team's pregame preparations, when they kind of realize, how are we going to stop these guys? And we've been on the other end of that sometimes thinking, when you go play those Alabama fronts, sometimes you think, how in the world are we going to block these guys? In certain teams, how are we going to defend this passing game? The Bulldogs are kind of serving some notice. And I think that's an exciting part of it, too, is that we have an offensive system here that we haven't even really open the playbook for, and you go out and you put up 63 points. I don't care if you're playing against air. The way State played tonight at times, they showed they can be a dominant football team, and I think that really bodes well for the future.
Well, the Bulldogs will not be playing air in their next contest, and they will not be at the home field crowd. Yes, I know a lot of you are keeping track of what Kansas State did tonight. They needed a fourth-quarter touchdown punt return to spark a rally coming back from 24-12 to win 27-24. And I understand that South Dakota had a field goal attempt to send an overtime clank on them after a penalty. But we know that K-State has a tradition of sometimes starting a season slow. They'll be very dangerous. They're certainly well coached. And the thing, though, that I keep looking at is the one I watched a few times last year, and I certainly watched another Big 12 team today. For all the reputations those teams have for offense, I don't think they have the athleticism out there, particularly on the defensive side of the ball. So this is a week for the Bulldogs to take this, learn from it, raise their level of competition, and raise their level of execution against a much better opponent on a hostile field.
It's true, David, and let us also serve notice, as Joe Moorhead said on Monday, Nick Fitzgerald is the starting quarterback. He returns to the QB1 designation right now. So all the preparation starting tomorrow for Kansas State will begin with Nick Fitzgerald. He was on the field tonight. Speaking with Keaton Thompson in between series, he threw the ball around with Jalen Maiden. He was very active on the Bulldog sideline. That's what's Michael Story and Corey Thomas. And I think it's important for Bulldog fans to understand that they didn't get a night off. They weren't over in the dorms watching the game with friends. They were here, plugged in. Michael Story, the first guy off the bench every single time State scored, rushing the field, celebrating with his teammates. They remain engaged. And that's an important part of this process, too. So when those guys are suspended, and hopefully there won't be an issue going forward, but they were still engaged with what's happening with the team. Still a part of the process, and Nick Fitzgerald very much a part of Keaton Thompson's development and really kind of a caretaker tonight. He's back now, and we're ready to go. This incident is now behind us once and for all.
And probably no less than authority than Keaton Thompson himself, Nick Fitzgerald did not call the first play per se, but he knew they were calling that particular, they expected them to blitz. So he told Keaton, if you execute it, that play will go for a touchdown. Keaton said he wasn't sure, but they ran it. Colin Hill scores 12 seconds on their first touch of the Joe Moorhead era. The Bulldogs score. They put up 63 points tonight, and now we're on to game 2, to a higher level competition, but with a lot of confidence after an opening victory. So for all our team from Gene Stage 24/7 who are busy in the press box right now filing stories where we're headed as well, for Steve Robertson, this is David Murray.